much higher can you get?
Marijuana is a drug that prevents a person from being able to cross their eyes.
John Doe.
Welcome to the John Doe Radio Show. I am your host, John Doe. I hope you had a fantastic week. Thank you again for joining us this week. We've got news from Canadia, story with Jeff Sessions and how scary the situation coming up this Friday with the federal budget expiration happening and the Rohrabacher medical marijuana protections expiring with it. We've also got a story from the Army and people who smoke weed being allowed into the military more and more. I didn't know if you smoked weed before that you basically weren't allowed to be in the military. Wouldn't they have a lot more people rejected than what they say in this news story coming up? Talking about Maryland, we're talking about Michigan, and more here on the JDR. Coming up at the beginning of the year, I've got some giveaways. We're going to start to say thanks to you for joining us here on the JDR and being supportive. Some seed giveaways and other product giveaways. Also, I gotta say, if you're in Colorado or if you're coming to Colorado, I gotta give a huge shout out and thanks to the company that I work for showing me support. I'm in love with what I'm doing currently. Green Dot Labs. If you get a chance, go to greendotLabs.com. You can find out where our hash is, the terpiest of terps, some of the best hash created anywhere in the entire world, greendotLabs.com, and you can find out where our products are. Big, huge free plug for them there. Also this week, super excited on a few of these stories. Don't hold it against me. Finding the passion again for trying to educate you on as much as possible. And another exciting moment that we have, I've been trying to figure out what the best way, exciting moment I had this past week when I found out some new news. I've been trying to figure out the best way to have interviews here on the JDR. Obviously, we can do the over-the-phone interviews, and that's going to happen. But if I can, I want to have people in and talk with them in person. It just sounds better, comes across better. It's a better product to present for you. I currently, in the situation I have right now with both places I record the show, it's not the easiest to invite someone or a group of people in to do an interview with them. But 2 blocks away from one of the spots that I record the show, Adam Dunn and the Adam Dunn Show has moved in. This nice spot called the Metlo. Crazy cannabis positive people that run this place. He's setting up shop and his studio there a couple blocks away. So we'll be able to have interviews and people and sessions in, and I'm so stoked about it. It takes so much weight off my shoulders for being able to bring you the JDR product that I want to bring to you. So but that education side of things will come into play. Crazy super excited about that. And then, as I said, crazy super over the top in a few of these stories this week. But this is JDR you know. This is JDR you come to love, I hope. Let's get to it.
The John Doe Radio Show.
The last we heard from Canada is that legalization should be happening by July, and with hopes that everything goes well, there's still a projection for that happening. Canada faces one last hurdle, become the first G7 nation to legalize recreational marijuana. This story coming from CNN Money. By the way, with everything you hear, including with what you hear from me, I will obviously try to fact check most things for you. If something doesn't sound right, I'm going to check up on it. This week I wanted to run a story from CNN Money about jobs in the cannabis industry, but then you start reading into the story and it talks about how you need a doctorate in chemistry to do extractions, and extractors were making about $250,000 a year, and I went up to that X, click, and dropped the story because that's just ridiculous, And you can't 100% blame it on, like, say, CNN or Fox News or whatever. It's probably that writer that is a ridiculous asshat, ran with false BS that he was told from an industry expert, and then CNN trusts this writer, so they threw it up there. So it's a bigger thing than just blaming it on the news agencies, okay? Please. Can we just stop saying fake news, by the way? Just please. If we're going to stop saying fake news, then the people who are saying fake news really have to be the ones that stop looking at like blogs that write news secondhand. Oh, I saw this story on the Fox News website, but then I saw this on CNN, so I'm going to take the news that I agree with from the CNN site and the news that I agree with from the Fox site and put them all together. Man, I am on one today. Seriously. Super excited to get back on the mic with you guys. Third story I've recorded today. And we're not slowing down. Calm down. Edibles, vape pen, something. We've got to take a dab. Woosah. Back to the story. Dude, if I didn't know any better, I would say that I need like ADD medication or something that, like heroin would be another example. Just completely kidding here. Canada's Cannabis Act was introduced in the Canadian Senate last week. Its last legislative stop. The bill enjoys wide public support and the backing of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I think it's broadly recognized that criminalizing cannabis has been a failure, said Senator Tony Dean of Ontario. He's a sponsor of the bill. He believes it will pass by July 2018, if not before. Retailers have been preparing to start selling legal marijuana in July, so the timing could be tight, but cannabis can't try to put Canada and cannabis in the same word there. But Canada's recreational marijuana market is expected to mean big dollars. According to recent estimates from the Marijuana Business Daily, annual sales for Canada's recreational marijuana market could range between $2.3 billion and $4.5 billion by 2021. Also, these publications have no clue how much actually could be raised because it's just that's one of the wild cards. We found out that here in Colorado. We'll find that out next in California. I'm telling you right now, if the taxes don't completely drown the system in California, and I'm not just necessarily talking about regulation, but the black market still will thrive heavily with how high taxes are going to be. If the taxes were right in California, the amount of weed that they are going to make and the numbers that they are throwing up in California are completely low. They're so low, crazy low. But they may be close, probably going to be a little bit more, but in my opinion, taxes, they may be that thorn in that system's side there. That and slow rollout in municipalities. The Canadian market with full federal support still won't top U.S. revenues, where recreational marijuana is being legalized on a state-by-state basis. Recreational sales for cannabis are expected to total $7.1 billion to $10.3 billion in the U.S. by 2021. That's according to Marijuana Business Daily, getting a better eye on what estimates could be. But then you look at what Colorado has done, and we've doubled. I mean, I can't remember what the formula was, but it was like last year we doubled the first couple of years, and then or the year before we doubled the first couple of years, and then last year we doubled the first four. I don't know, something ridiculous. So patterns are starting to emerge, but I think that it's becoming so popular in the sense that people are not going to worry about, just like the Army story that we talked about. People are not worried about talking about weed. They're not worried about maybe thinking about weed as something that they can use medicinally or even recreationally. So we're going to see these numbers just increase exponentially everywhere, These figures do not include expected estimated revenue for medical sales in either country. Dean believes the legal recreational sales will be able to begin almost immediately in July, despite the short legislative window. Unlike U.S. states, which on average have taken more than a year to get their retail and tax infrastructures built, Canada will build on government-supported online sales that were implemented to support the country's medical marijuana industry. Canadians buy their pot on websites and have it delivered. It's funny, this CNN money story. That's its entire separate line, its own paragraph. Canadians buy their pot on websites and have it delivered. It's the future, man. It's the future. I don't really like that idea, though. For convenience, I like that idea. If I know a place has quality cannabis, then that idea could be great. But if it's not quality cannabis, or if it's something that you're rolling the dice on, not every pod grower, not every cannabis grower, not every shop, not every lab is created equally. Websites like Ganja Express and Buy My Weed Online and Emerald Health Therapeutics currently offer medical marijuana customers an array of cannabis products, from traditional marijuana that's sold by the gram to concentrates and edibles. Canadian cultivators are ready to meet anticipated surge in demand when recreation customers could start ordering. We are very well positioned for July, said Nate Rice, a management consultant with Premium Produce, a medical marijuana farm in British Columbia that has expanded its staff from about 70 to 100 so it can grow annual production from 14,000 pounds of marijuana to about 134,000 pounds by the end of 2018. And that's some ramping up. California, where retail sales of recreational marijuana are supposed to begin January 1st, would eventually account for half of all U.S. sales and would likely match Canadian sales just by itself, according to Chris Walsh, founder of Marijuana Business Daily. This is why Nick... I know this guy's name, too. He's brain farted. Nick Kovacevic, CEO of California-based Kush Bottles. I hate reading names in stories. I really do. Every time we read a name on JDR, that's part of the game of taking hits. Just throw it in there. Unless I just completely are smooth with it. Roll right through it, no problems. Boom. Mama would have been proud of how I pronounced their name, which rarely happens, so that's good for you. You get to take a hit while you're listening to JDR. Kush Bottles. This dude who makes vaporizer equipment said he has no plans to do business outside the U.S. We have a big market opportunity here in the U.S., but marijuana's shaky legal status in the U.S. means things could change quickly for entrepreneurs working in cannabis. In the U.S., the growth of recreational marijuana is artificially hampered by the fact that cannabis is illegal. Blah, 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 blah. Let's get back to Canada. Canada's move toward legalization has already inspired one U.S. company. New York-based alcohol beverage producer Constellation Brands will buy a 10% stake in the Canadian pot company Canopy Growth Corporation for $190 million. Cannabis Industry analyst for New Frontier Data called the recent move towards Canadian legalization a wake-up call to all investors who were sitting on the sidelines that this is really going to happen. Really exciting news in Canada, and I have not read exactly how this is going to happen. And already the news of delivery-based sales is definitely something that's concerning. So I will make a huge point to read the cannabis bill that was introduced in Canada and to have an educated opinion on it, besides just being excited that Canada is the first country that's going to move forward with legalization. It's something to grow off of. And here's the... Even if you hate everything that's going on right now, and I don't know where to be specific with, because I don't know how you can 100% say you hate what's going on here in Colorado and in a few other states. I don't know how you can hate what's going on in Canada, but if you want to use that word, I can understand it. But here's something that's a positive from all this, is that with all the states coming online and all these lawmakers talking about reform, there has been positive movement forward and erosion of ridiculous laws that have existed before. It's something that is exciting, and it's something to look forward to in the future. That if you don't like what's happening in California, you don't like what's happening in Colorado, you don't like what's happening in Maine, Vermont, wherever it is, that there's going to be a switch that's flipped when we go federal. When everything gets taken over by the feds, that's what we really need to worry about. That's what we'll be stuck with for a seriously extended period of time to come. These tests that are going on, because that's what we're going to call them, even though I think in Colorado we've passed the test, that we've had a successful experiment here. The only way that it could fail is if, the government crushed it. And that's just not failing at what we've done here in Colorado. That's just running up against ridiculous BS and a drug war mentality. People not wanting to progress forward. But what's happening in each one of these test grounds in each one of these states, we are seeing progress forward. We are seeing good things. But the thing is, those things are going to probably be reset down the line. So who's to say that what's happening in Canada, because I can't see delivery sales being the only way that you get your product has become available to you in Canada over the extended period of time. I don't see that being the just the written in stone way that it happens. Now, if you live in Canada and don't have a place that's within 100 miles of you, 200 miles of you, then I can understand this is probably a good idea. And it probably does work fantastic for a lot of people in Canada. There's been a ton of times that I have wanted delivery here in Colorado, and I've known people here in the U.S. that have ordered from companies in Canada, and I've seen the product from companies in Canada. I've seen fantastic weed and product from Canadian companies, and I've seen horrible shiz. So, anyway, it's cool. Next.
The John Doe Radio Show. One stop for your stoner fix.
I'm out here trying to make it. Woman, can't you see? Takes a lot of money to make it. Let's talk truthfully.
I saw a story this past week about how marijuana prices are plunging in Colorado and how it could be bad for a lot of businesses here. And at first I kind of brushed it off as one of those articles that was more hype than what it was worth. And as I got to thinking about things and talking to a few more people this week, I really did realize that cannabis prices are dropping off quite heavily, and it will be interesting to see, not trying to get off topic here too much, but when California legalization comes through, I have a feeling, and a lot of people have a feeling, that prices in Cali will increase even more than they are now, and hopefully eventually will come down. I think it really depends on how the tax situation is handled in California, with how extended the prices are inflated there. And I hope that they're not too much more inflated than they are now, because shiz is expensive in Cali. Holy crap. What you can get away with selling some things for there for the quality is just absolutely insane. But in asking around and trying to build this story a little bit and add a little bit more meat rather than just saying, hey, marijuana prices are falling, a lot of people outside of customers and even people in the front of shops, bud tenders, and people involved in the industry don't realize how much the price of cannabis affects businesses. And there's something a lot of people also don't know, is that there's almost this stock. Maybe that's not the right way to think of it. There is an average price that the state tracks for prices. And for, say, like a pound of weed currently in Colorado, $1,300. They expect taxes from that $1,300. So whatever the average is and whatever they calculate that number to be, that's what they expect the taxes from. So if you sell that cannabis for less than $1,300, they still expect the taxes from the $1,300 sale. Do you get what I'm saying? Without getting into it too much more and making it too much more difficult and complicated like it is, that's the basics. And there are a few people in Colorado that are fighting that, the way that is how the taxes are collected. And in my opinion, we will have somebody, hopefully a lawyer or an accountant that knows exactly what they're talking about with this, because when you really do start to look at it and you talk to business owners about this, it ties their hands in a lot of ways, and it's really one of those frustrating things that they have to work with. I don't agree with it. I think it's I think it's silly, and in a lot of ways, I'm obviously not a constitutional lawyer or work for the IRS or a tax account or whatever the hell the person that would be the expert in this. But to me, it seems like this is a ridiculous and almost, I don't want to say, lack of a better term, unconstitutional way to get taxes done. So, I don't know. I think it should be based off of whatever the price that you sell the weed for is what it should be. But there's multiple reasons why that doesn't happen, to prevent crime, to make sure the state gets their money, etc. So without getting off on that too much, getting back to the story at hand. In talking to people around the community and in trying to build this story, one of the surprising things that was brought to my attention is how low a pound of weed has actually got here in Colorado. There are outdoor farms here in Colorado that are starting to become, I don't know, it depends on who you talk to on how how big they feel a massive farm is or a massive company is. But there are some very, very, very large facilities and farms opening up here that are churning out, for lack of a better term, less than mids. And that price is being echoed for the quality that they're showing. $500, $600, $700, $800 pounds coming out of some of these outdoor farms. And I'm sure there's probably some indoor places of lesser quality that have tried to unload pounds for around the $1,000 or less price also. One thing that interests me is how much the price has dropped over the past year or so. I mean, it's the past 2 years even. We've seen cannabis prices basically go from a range of $2,000 or more on good price, good quality weed, the high end, the top shelf, drop consistently over the past year, month by month, and gotten to the point now to where some of these companies are worried about that if it drops any more, will they be able to stay in business? The margins that a lot of these cannabis companies are facing are not very big. So if you're not a robust company, doesn't have quality weed, maybe hasn't done business correctly, you face the situation of possibly having the market put you out of business. And not necessarily in the most fair of senses. There are a lot of taxes that cannabis companies cannot write off. I always get into this story because it's not really the most involved story. It tells you how much money is to be expected, and in the end, anyway. Few other industries are growing as quickly and consistently as legal marijuana, which is a big reason investors haven't been able to get enough of marijuana stocks in recent years. I'm really working on this story because I really am hugely interested. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that prices are where they're at and some of the concerns that people are looking at now. It's crazy interests me how the inner workings of a company managed to slalom in and out of the tax rules and how they overhead and how much money is actually made. I mean, it fascinates me that some companies seem like they're actually able to make a ton of money, and it's like they've got a cash cow, basically printing money, and then other companies, you hear from them, they're not making shiz. And overall, I think most people are probably not making as much as you think they are. And there's probably some owners listening to this podcast right now, dumbfounded by what I'm saying, and maybe I'm crazy far off, or maybe they have way better insight. And that's where we're going to go with this. And that's what we're going to work on with this story, is trying to dig it a little bit deeper to the business side of things and how these prices, because when we hear cannabis prices falling as a customer, we're like, yeah, buddy, that's going to follow through to the front of the store. Price is going to drop across the board. Good times, man. More access for everybody. That is not the case. Absolutely not the case. I have some things when it comes to talking about cannabis. The whole story is about cannabis. Talking about hash and the hash market and how competitive it's got. The prices of hash, how shatter has the bottoms kind of fallen out on shatter, how dry material is getting less and less available to even be able to make shatter for a lot of the companies. It's most of these companies that are making it in-house or white label that shatter's appearing, and then everybody else is doing the live resin and diamonds and terps. That's the other fascinating part about it too, is how the hash companies struggled over the years, and now a few just skyrocketing to the top. All right, I'm trying to focus. So we will dig into the story a little bit more, and I'm going to work on this a lot. We're going to definitely try and bring someone in to talk to an interview. I've been saying we're going to bring someone in and have an interview, but Adam Dunn and the Adam Dunn Show and So High Gallery and Hood Lab, I don't know exactly how they're going to brand it, just bought a office a couple blocks away from where I do the JDR sometimes. And that opens up the ability to be able to have someone, for me to be able to go out and invite someone in to do interviews in person. Currently, I just can't have interviews in person with the situation I'm in, not comfortably, in either places where I record the show right now. So that, it just works out fantastic. So I'm super excited about that. We'll get more people in here to give you insight besides me just analyzing the news, which there's value to it. And I definitely try to work on these stories myself and not just read these things to you. It's bringing insight, talking to people I know, working as a hobby journalist, because that's pretty much what it is. It's not paying. If this paid me full-time, we'd go out and be a full-time journalist, which I still think there's going to be a spot for people like myself in the mainstream eventually. So hopefully we're pioneering that position for John Doe Jr. in the future to be able to make a ton of money. All right, I'm sorry, we sidetracked like crazy here. To this story, according to investment firm Cowen & Company, the legal U.S. cannabis market is expected to reach $50 billion in annual sales by 2026. On a more intermediate basis, cannabis research firm ArcView is looking for a compound annual growth rate of 26% through 2021 in North America, which would yield almost a $22 billion market by 2021. That rapid growth could be the ticket to substantial gains for investors willing to gamble on a substance that's still wholly illegal at the federal level in the United States. And this starts to get into why it's an uphill climb for some of these investors, and why, because even with that outlook, why it may not be as great as you think it is. And this story doesn't give you details. We're going to try and talk to someone about those details, and I feel like I've gained trust of people in this industry to be able to bring in some folks that will open up and talk to you about these things and be smarter about the information that they give than some of these news stories have been. For instance, there was a CNN Money story that ran this past week about how master extractors, I think I talk about this in another story too, about how master extractors needed a master's degree in blah, 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 and they made $250,000 a year. No, that's not right. And an industry expert was quoted as saying that. And now that I think about it, they didn't even say who the industry expert was. So obviously not an industry expert. So that's my goal, is to try and bring you larger stories from what the mainstream is trying to give you. And I'm not trying to be like, fart the mainstream. It doesn't give you that. We have a fantastic opportunity and chance to grab on to the experiences of the people around me. And we're still buried deep in the cannabis industry here in Colorado. I work for one of the best cannabis companies, the most awesomest, one of the most awesomest cannabis companies in the entire nation, and absolutely love it, and love the people that I continually get to talk to and meet every day. And it's invigorating me again, and I'm finding that passion for bringing you information and myself learning as much as I possibly can. So I want to get back into the swing of taking as much opportunity and advantage of that as I possibly can. Fire truck out there. All right, focus back into this story. Where were we at? In addition, cannabis companies face disadvantages come tax time. Did I already talk about that? Nope, we didn't. For example, in the U.S., most cannabis companies are unable to obtain basic financial services, ranging from something as simple as a checking account to a line of credit or a loan. The reason: financial institutions report to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, a federally created entity, and since marijuana is illegal at the federal level, providing financial services to a pot company could be construed as money laundering, leading to fines and/or criminal charges against a bank. In addition, cannabis companies face disadvantages come tax time, and this is the big one, namely U.S. Tax Code 280E disallows businesses that sell federally illegal substances from taking normal corporate income tax deductions. Though not all pot businesses are profitable, if they are, they'll be required to pay taxes on their gross profit instead of net profit, leaving left over to reinvest and hire more workers. Beyond just financial challenges, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, which is another big story that's going to be coming up in the next week. In fact, Friday, if we do not hear something by Friday with the nation's budget, the Rohrabacher Amendment was put inside that. And that's what this next paragraph talks about, is how there's no one that's chomping at the bit more than Jeff Sessions to come after legal cannabis markets, and I don't wholly believe that. I don't think he could be successful when it comes down to this. And maybe this is... maybe we'll talk about... Let me see if I have a story up right here, because we're pretty much done talking about the price thing in Colorado. We're going to dig into that more, and we're definitely going to follow it. There's also a Business Insider publication for cannabis that's doing a lot of work and being quoted in a lot of these news stories, and I'm going to look into talking with them, and maybe they're the person that we need to get to and talk to on the show. And I'm hesitant about saying that too, because maybe it seems like a few times have been hyping the situation a little bit too on that side. So I don't want to hear hype. I want to hear facts. Damn it. So we'll keep digging into that. Do I have the story of Sessions up here? Yep, I have it right here. So I'm going to just move on to right into this story because it's important.
Listening to the John Doe Radio Show.
I've said it over and over, and I hope I don't eat my words by saying it, but I don't think Jeff Sessions is as gung-ho as coming after the cannabis industry as everybody is making it seem like he is, and I do not blame them, at least the owners and people in this cannabis industry. I think the media has been trying to figure out exactly how Sessions is going to go about his saber rattling and basically threats that he's made, and ran with the idea that a crackdown could happen anytime soon, and the whole fear scare tactics mentality has really pushed its way out in this particular topic. And God, I hope I don't eat my words when I say this, because we're coming up on a very interesting and nerve-wracking week, not only if you're talking about the federal government and Trump and the end of the federal government running out of money and the spending bill expiring on Friday and all the other crap that goes along with that, but not only does the federal government basically run out of money, spending bill expires on Friday, but inside that bill is the Rohrabacher Amendment, which protects medical marijuana states from prosecution. Basically, what it says is that medical marijuana state, that federal money cannot be used to prosecute law-abiding medical marijuana states and patients, etc. So funding for the federal government is set to run out on Friday unless Congress enacts a bill extending current spending levels before the midnight deadline. Also set to expire is the current rider that prevents the Department of Justice from interfering with state medical marijuana laws. If lawmakers fail to enact an extension, the marijuana protections would disappear, but because drug enforcement agents are considered accepted from furloughs, the Justice Department would be newly empowered to enforce federal cannabis prohibition wherever it wants, regardless of state laws. That means U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a longtime vocal legalization opponent, would get a legal green light to direct the DEA and federal prosecutors to crack down on medical marijuana patients and providers for the first time since he took office in February. All agents in the DEA field organization are accepted from furlough because they support active counter-narcotics investigations. A Justice Department shutdown contingency plan says DEA investigations need to continue uninterrupted so the cases are not compromised and the health and safety of the American public are not placed at risk. I don't think, and hopefully you're not naive enough to believe that an investigation would stop just because, the government shuts down, basically. I mean, these cowboys are way too gung-ho to come after you for that shit to happen. A lot of these bastards would probably keep doing what they're doing regardless of not being paid. And that's a scary thought, to think that there is someone so gung-ho and so much full force steam locomotive like a freight train headed at you to stop what you're doing, smoking weed, is so bad that they will go to the end of the earth to stop you from doing it. I mean, couldn't you be thinking and putting your energy into so many better things? The same goes for federal prosecutors. As presidential appointees, U.S. attorneys are not subject to furlough. The shutdown plan says accepted employees are needed to address ongoing criminal matters and the civil matters of urgency throughout the nation. Criminal litigation will continue without interruption as an accepted activity to maintain the safety of human life and the protection of property. Now I open the story talking about how news stories and sessions were scaring the shiz out of you and media outlets were running the whole thing, basically. And this is proof positive right here. I mean, did they really need to list off the emergency management plans for what happens if the government shutdowns for the DEA. I mean, there's just the important point is that this is making you aware. I guess what you could take out of this is that it's creating a sense of awareness and making you aware that this is still kind of a scary situation and that, you know, we're still not fully out of the clear in this. And when I talk to owners of companies, they're ones that have definitely not forgot about this. The owners that own the larger companies here in Colorado, say Native Roots, that's the first one that comes to my mind, Live Well. I'm sure these companies, and even the owner of smaller companies, you know, are well aware that at any time the other shoe could drop and the shit could hit the fan. And it is a scary thought to think about. I think people, not necessarily at the top, I don't know, that's the wrong way to put it, the top of the industry, is bud tenders, people that are helping make this industry run, that are the gears of this industry, you know, maybe we kind of become a little bit used to the situation. We become a little bit jaded about the things that are happening around this, because at this point, there are certain things that just seem normal here in Colorado. The other day, I was reading the Cannabis Badge Network, which is this group online, and I don't know if this has anything to do with anything. It's just something interesting that I saw and wanted to repeat, and it kind of goes into play of how important it is to think about the grassroots and the pillars of this community and industry and what makes it work. And that is the grassroots, the fight to make this legal. The people that didn't care about getting fame, didn't care about getting money. They just wanted to be in the cannabis industry. They just wanted their neighbor to not get arrested for weed. They just wanted to be happy in a passion. And those are the people that created this industry, that lifted it up, that helped pass the laws, that helped create reform, and they're the people that continue to pass this passion and the spirit and the culture of cannabis across from nation to nation and build it out of the shadows and into the mainstream. And maybe one day, the grassroots effort and everything that I'm talking about and this ideal and our culture and what we are and what created everything that we are today, that will become mainstream someday. And it may get lost. The passion and the love that I'm talking about here, I hope you understand the feeling that I'm getting here, because I'm trying to throw a feeling here without words. I just feel like I can't explain it well enough for you. That the other day when I read this Cannabis Badge Network post about how let's see all the OGs with the lower badge numbers. Here in Colorado, you have a badge number, starts with M00001. You know, mine, for instance, wait, I probably shouldn't give you my badge number, but probably doesn't matter. But say your badge number is M65708, you know, and that's the number that's your number. Like, the first person, badge number 1 is the first person. Badge number 69,000 is the 69,000th person. So this person posted up, let's see the OGs. Who's got the lowest badge number in the group? And I gotta be honest, it smacked my pride a little bit. It really did. And it probably smacked my pride not only personally, but because I've known so many other people in the industry that a statement like that, which I'm being really, really picky here, I understand it. A statement like that really was kind of a stab to the side of like, are you forgetting about all this pre-badge stuff and all the people that created what we have here and everything that we've built on the blood, sweat, and tears, literally the foundation of everything that we have built on these people's efforts. And we cannot forget that. We cannot, regardless of whatever, celebrate, being that lower badge number, and people were thanking other people in this thread for being in the industry for as long as they have. And I don't want to say anything bad about it. I'm not saying shit about that. I'm just saying, let's not forget the reason why a lot of us are protected today is because of the hard work and the dedication and sacrifice of a lot of people before you. And I don't want to lose that. That's why California took so long to get legalization in, is because they were afraid that this was going to be lost. All this foundation, and it in a lot of ways is. What's going to be scary, and we'll talk about this more in the future too, and this goes hand in hand with the price drops and black market, is those farms in Northern California, if they're not allowed to operate in the legal market, you really think all of them are going to shut down for the black market? I really don't think so. So the vacuum and supply for California that's created there after January is going to be just fascinating to watch. It's going to be exciting in all the positive ways. And then I say that and I remember that, there's a lot of people that are going to be left behind. And let's not forget about that. All right, anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack on all that. It's just important that, we remember these things and not hype up the end of everything that we know it today. Because you're going to become that person. If they decide to come in and try and shut us down, Sessions says it's all done. I mean, how many of you actually are going to tuck in your turtle shell, roll away? Maybe that was a turtle armadillo hybrid I was talking about there, but you get the point. You're not just going to give up, put your guns down and walk away. You're going to fight. You're going to fight for the business that you created, for your position in this industry, everything that you've dedicated. Your life, as it is now, may be completely surrounded in cannabis, legally. I mean, you're paying taxes. You have a good job. Who's not going to fight for that? And if you don't, then should you really be a part of this industry? I'm just saying, there it is. So, anyway, finishing out this story, President Trump, who tweeted earlier this year that he favored a temporary government shutdown, has suggested to his advisors in recent weeks that a congressional failure to enact a new spending bill would be politically beneficial for administration. Something that is a little bit scary about all this is that how politics and the pawns get moved around. So anyway, if things do expire, I would not expect Jeff Sessions to clamp down anytime soon on cannabis. It would be political suicide, and maybe that's me just being naive and crazy about this. You may see people on the fringe, people that are on the gray area, and what that includes, I don't know, may get busted. You may see a few things happen, but if this does expire, number one, I don't see it expiring for forever. It will, in my opinion, come back into play, but even if it does, I don't think it's anything to freak about too much. Let's move on.
You're listening to the John Doe Radio Show.
Full disclosure for this next story, I'm not really sure exactly what it takes to get into the Army or the military. In fact, what I thought it took was you took a test and then it placed you on whether or not you were going to be in the officers' ranks or you were going to be a grunt, or that just goes to show you how much I actually know about getting into the military. And I figured, why would they give a fark if you've actually smoked marijuana before? You would think that if you smoked marijuana before that and you weren't allowed to be in the military, there would be zero people in the military. And maybe that just goes to show that I think everybody in the world smokes weed when actually everybody doesn't smoke weed. That's crazy. Anyway, the Army is issuing more waivers for recruits who use marijuana. This story from PBS.org. The number of waivers granted by the active duty Army for marijuana use jumped to more than 500 this year from 191 in 2016. And that number right there was almost even more surprising that the Army gives waivers for weed. I can maybe understand a waiver being, you go into the Army office, you say you want to be in the Army, they say, okay, we want to drug test you first, you test positive for weed, and then they give you a waiver. They're like, okay, it's just weed, that's all I tested positive for. Move right in. Seems to me that would be perfectly acceptable. Anyway, let's get to this story here. Smoked pot? Want to go to war? No problem. Jesus. Such a God. As more states lessen or eliminate marijuana penalties, the Army is granting hundreds of waivers to enlist people who used the drug in their youth as long as they realize they can't do so again in the military. The number of waivers granted by active duty Army for marijuana use jumped to more than 500 this year from 191 in 2016. 3 years ago, no such waivers were granted. The big increase is just one way officials are dealing with orders to expand the Army's size. So, here's the deal. It's like, I've always thought this whole time that if I wanted to, I could have gone into the military. there was a very short period of time where I was trying to figure out what the fuck I was going to do next, and it seemed like maybe the easiest and this is what a lot of kids get themselves into also, is this line of thinking that I got myself into, that maybe the military would give me some direction, would show me how to be a man, would actually teach me how to be a responsible person. Now that I start talking about it, maybe I actually should have done. No. But maybe this was something that could have given me a path in life. And it was either that or it was going to broadcasting school. There was a few moments that led me into going to broadcasting school. One was the first moment would made me really decide I was going to do this was I rear-ended an RTD bus in Denver right outside the Ohio Center for Broadcasting Colorado campus. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. Probably, I looked down for like a millisecond, and you know how like the bus lurches forward, and so you start lurching forward, and I think I looked down at that second and then just tapped the bus going like 2 miles an hour. Sent the hood of my Dodge Neon up. I mean, it was almost like, it didn't tear it open, but it was almost can opener like, where it was just like, it just bent it straight up, and the bus driver didn't even know that I had hit him. Somebody in the back of the bus was like, hey, I think this dude behind you just farked his car up, man. Anyway, I pulled off to the side to jump on top of the hood after the bus driver was like, man, I didn't even know you hit me. You don't want to call the cops? And I'm like, hell no, I don't want to call the cops. Pulled off to the side, and whoa, right in front of me was the Ohio Center for Broadcasting. And I was already trying to decide what road I would maybe take towards broadcasting. It's sitting there, right there. Bam! I'm like, this is a sign right here. So I ended up doing that, and it was also another conversation I had with my grandmother at the time about her not wanting to see me go into the military, and she would rather see me go into broadcasting school. Made a huge argument for it. So, crazy note, when I got done with broadcasting school is a lot of us got offered contracts to go work embedded in Iraq or somewhere, not pretty much in Iraq, but to work for Al Jazeera, to work for ABC News, NBC News. There was such a push and a need at that point in time for people to go over and be embedded. And when you think being embedded in the military, reporting on the military at that time, if you think back to that time, the first thing that's going to come to your mind is probably you'd be sitting inside of a tank, dodging shots being fired while there's a camera on you. And, maybe it's that way for a few people, but it's not necessarily that glamorous for everybody that's going over there and being involved in that situation. Like, you're maybe, if you're lucky, have a bodyguard, some people that could show you around. You hopefully know what the hell that you're doing. You're worldly versed. You're not just hopping in there like me, dude who's lived in Colorado for most of his life, super white, probably not going to blend in very well. I can grow a pretty dope beard, but still. The skinny white dude's probably, long story short, I didn't feel that was probably a good choice either. So didn't end up doing that, but there is some really cool jobs that were available and are still available over there for journalists that would like to get out in the field, would like to be in war zones, and would like to report on important things and feel like that they're doing something crazy, adventurous, and important. I don't know. Anyway. Probably not in my cards. As more states lessen or eliminate marijuana penalties, the Army's granting, blah, 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 provided they understand. Where was I at in this story? Got so sidetracked. From 3 years ago, provided they understand that they cannot do that when they serve in the military, I will waive that all day long. I gotta say this again in a different tone of voice. This is a major general saying this, by the way. Provided they understand they cannot do that when they serve in the military, I will waive that all day long. All right, so maybe that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. Senator Major General. Why do I want to call him a Senator Major General? Said Major General Jeff Snow, head of the Army's recruiting command. The marijuana use exclusions represent about 1/4 of total misconduct waivers the Army granted in the budget year that ended September 30th. They accounted for as much as the 50% increase overall in recruits who needed a waiver for some type of misconduct. Maybe, just maybe, this is people being honest about weed because they feel a little bit more comfortable about not getting in trouble and being thrown in the brig for this shiz. Huh? Sounds good to me. I need to calm down a little bit. We're a little bit fired up at this point in time. I don't know what it is. Maybe we need to go smoke some weed. I'm excited about the news, and I'm excited about getting back into the stories this week. Snow said the figures probably will rise as more states legalize decriminalizing marijuana. 8 states, Alaska, California, Colorado, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Oregon, and Washington, and the District of Columbia have fully legalized possession of small amounts of marijuana for adults. An additional 13 states, blah, 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 blah. Army leaders have faced increased scrutiny in recent weeks amid worries in Congress and elsewhere about a decline in quality among new enlistees. So basically, we need some people that smoke weed in here so we can get the quality up. That's what I heard. Army data shows more than 8,000 recruits received waivers in 2017 compared with about 6,700 last year. Most waivers concerned physical or mental health. Almost 2% of the recruits were considered Category 4, meaning they were scored 31 or less out of 99 on the aptitude test. Just over 0.5% were in the category in 2016. In total, the Army enlisted about 69,000 recruits this year, close to 6,000 more than last year. In an interview with the Associated Press, Snow said he went to his Army leadership earlier this year to ask if he could bring in more of the category for recruits to meet the higher enlistment goals. He said he promised that the Army would stay well below a 4% limit on the group allowed by the Pentagon. Recruits who scored lower than 31 on the test must meet specific criteria for the job that they are requesting. There is no leeway on previous pot smoking for them. They also can't require a health or conduct waiver. So basically what I'm hearing with all this, long story short with this, because it goes on to basically talk more about Army recruiting, blah, 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 is I'm surprised at how restrictive they are of letting people into the military. I think it's the same thing, though, with police units all over the place. Police departments. God, I couldn't think of the word for that. Police departments all over the nation. I think it's kind of the same thing, that everywhere it might be a little bit different with who they allow and what they allow. Maybe it's a little bit more lenient in some places than others. I would think that maybe if you came from Colorado, and which, I mean, there's a pretty good chance if you came from Colorado, you smoked weed. So I would think that the recruits would probably take that into consideration specifically, in Colorado. Or maybe if you from Alabama in a super small town and nobody smoked weed, nobody did any drugs, but everybody drank. Because that was perfectly fine, of course. That happened there in Alabama. So maybe that's, this kid might be a little bit foobar. He didn't go with everybody else out in Alabama. He might have a problem going with the flow. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's just regional, and maybe I just have no fucking clue what I'm talking about with the military, which I would probably put my bet on. Next.
Produced over a mile above sea level. How much higher can you get, Tondo?
Fantastic news coming out of Maryland. For years, many Maryland residents anxiously awaited the sale of medical marijuana, but continual delays proved to be a setback. This past Friday, the doors finally opened to a much-anticipated medical marijuana dispensary called Potomac Holistics. Residents flocked from across the state to buy products from the Rockville shop. The Washington Post reports among the first group of customers to make purchases was Denise Broyhill, who told the Associated Press that she'd hoped marijuana tablets would help ease the pain of a neurological condition, which she didn't specify. Article goes on to talk about her story and pretty much, gives the whole newsy testimonial stories in there. We hear those all the time. I don't mean to minimize anybody's testimonial. I just think sometimes we probably need to slice to the meat. So any patient in the state who seeks to purchase medical marijuana as a treatment option must have approval from their medical provider. By the way, I'm not necessarily, it's like talking out loud when I discuss things like that with stories, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like going through my train of thought on how you can maybe skim through a story and find out, if it actually has news in it or if it's just something that's a bunch of filler, like somebody's testimonials, people telling good things. And I'm not saying those testimonials and the positive things to say about weed, and I've been waiting for my entire life for legalization to come here. I'm not talking about that because they do have its space, but for some of us, there's just a need to cut through all that fat and get right to I don't know, maybe I'm just being a dick here. I don't know, thinking out loud. Less thinking, more talking. Any patient in the state who seeks to purchase medical marijuana as a treatment option must have approval from their medical provider and be diagnosed with one of the following conditions. Cachexia, I think that's how you say that. Anorexia, wasting syndrome, chronic or severe pain, severe nausea, seizures, severe or persistent muscle spasms, glaucoma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In Maryland, they are very liberal with the qualifying conditions, says William Eskenazi, one of the owners of Potomac Holistics. Medical provider is loosely defined and allows not only physicians to confirm a patient's eligibility, but also nurse practitioners, dentists, podiatrists, and nurse midwives. It's quite interesting. I mean, compared to other states and what they have considered caregiver, well, not necessarily caregiver. A caregiver could be someone that's growing your plants or making your medicine for you, so that's not necessarily right. But medical provider, as they say it here in a lot of other states, is your doctor. And it has to be, in a lot of places, a bona fide doctor-patient relationship, meaning you have to consistently go to this doctor. The doctor has to do follow-ups. And maybe it's not even consistently in some states. You just have to have a follow-up, and the doctor has to be in obvious control of your care. So that's a pretty big sway off the what's the word I'm looking for? That's a pretty big swaying off the beaten path. God damn it! I thought there was really more of an exciting analogy that I was going to be able to make there for you, but that just didn't work out there. I'm sorry. I apologize. Less thinking, more talking. Although the state's medical marijuana bill passed in 2013, the first plants weren't grown until fall of 2017. One reason for the long delay was due to change in the law. The 2013 law was only open to academic medical centers, but none showed interest. Therefore, the law was changed the following year to give permission to licensed doctors to offer marijuana as treatment options for certain conditions. As of September 2nd, 19 companies were enrolled in the medical marijuana program, the Washington Post reports. By the way, this story from Newsweek.com. The program is launched now. Patrick Jameson, executive director of the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, told the Post on September 2nd, we have growers, processors, and a dispensary, and we have a lab. The market will determine how this moves forward. I'm just going to go out on a limb here, but with as liberal as you have medical providers listed as the people that can recommend cannabis for people in this state, you're going to need a little bit more than one lab, a little bit more than one dispensary, maybe, just maybe. But that's really good news for Maryland. Maryland and a few other states in that area have had a history of being positive with cannabis, have had a history of trying to push hard with reform, but then had maybe a ridiculous law that stands in the way, like this one in Maryland that really made it, gave no reason for anybody to apply to be a part of this program, and it wouldn't have worked in the first place, or whether it be that, or whether it be the governor that's standing in the way, or just a few people in the state legislature that are standing in the way. It's fantastic to see these things start to roll out. As we talked before, New Jersey, Massachusetts is doing fantastic work on moving forward with their framework on legal sales. So it's good to see. Maine, I'm still looking at you. I know it's going to be a while before we see any movement in Maine, but I just want to remind everybody, put the pressure on Maine. There's Farkers there, get it done. Dang old piece of thing. All right, let's move on.
John Doe Radio.
Michigan, for a while, has had sort of a gray area when it comes down to dispensaries. Hasn't had the most robust framework in terms of regulatory. So what's happened is that's being put into place. Less than 2 weeks before medical marijuana facilities apply to do business in Michigan, the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs has officially released the rules that will govern their operation. The emergency administrative rules are designed to prevent or to preserve, that is, patient protections and provide them with access to safe medical marijuana, said the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation Director, Andrew Brisboe. Those rules allow growers, processors, secure transporters, provisioning centers, and safety compliance facilities to operate under clear requirements. The legislature last year passed new laws allowing licensed businesses to grow, process, transport, test, and dispense medical marijuana. The laws brought businesses like medical marijuana dispensaries out of a legal gray area and put LARA, L-A-R-A, the administrative administration, stupid way to put that, and its newly formed BMMR in charge of hammering out the details of what would be allowed and disallowed under the new system. Jesus Christ. The MED, the DOR, the LARA, the BMMR. These details have been the subject of contentious hearings before the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board and intensive behind-the-scenes lobbying efforts from businesses hoping to grab a piece of what the House Fiscal Agency projects to be an $837 million business. The department has addressed some common questions, letting people in on their direction for transition rules, the stacking of multiple licenses, capitalization requirements, and co-location of multiple license types. This includes clarification of all that stuff, but the full set of rules released today give medical marijuana businesses a clear picture of exactly what will be required of them. The rules are being filed on an emergency basis because of a crunch timeline, as applications open for medical marijuana businesses on December 15th. For a minute there, let me get to this other article on my phone here, as I almost knock shiz over and completely fark up the recording here. For a minute, it was thought that dispensaries were going to have to close, that existing dispensaries weren't going to be able to, there's going to be a huge problem carrying over and bridging everything. After receiving hundreds of complaints from medical marijuana card holders that they would be without products they need for their health and extended periods of time, the State Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs reversed itself and decided to let dispensaries open during the licensing process. The department had come up with the ruling in September that dispensaries should close by December 15th, which is the day that applications for 5 categories of licensing become available or risk losing their chance of getting one of the lucrative licenses. But medical marijuana card holders, more than 272,000 people in Michigan, worried that the lapse of time between applications and the licenses being awarded by the state early next year would leave many of them without access to products that they need. They just repeated themselves twice in consecutive paragraphs. I guess I fell for it. I read the whole thing to you. So the state approved emergency rules. We talked about that. So that's a good thing and important. So without getting into details too much with the system there, it's basically reinforcing and allowing businesses to operate in Michigan as they should have been operating out of the shadows. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of was confused there for a minute too, because I thought Michigan had a system worked out to where things that were operating there, but they were still operating on a caregiver type situation where licenses were being stacked, and that's how these shops were open. And this allows for a more Colorado-esque framework to be put into place.
This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
That's going to do it for this week's JDR. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week. From the bottom of my heart, I wish that I could deliver grams of hash and bags of weed to every single one of your doors during this holiday season, because you deserve it. You deserve it, my friend. Take a chance to take a break, get yourself high, relax during this holiday season. I know it can be the holidays with a Z. I think it's going to get a little bit crazy. Make sure you take care of yourself. Enjoy. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for supporting JDR. I'm going to have some giveaways coming up for you starting at the beginning of the year, seeds and other products. And if you do get a chance, because I got to say thank you to the support that Green Dot Labs has shown me, the company that I work for. If you do get a chance to come here to Colorado, if you're in Colorado, check out greendotlabs.com. Find out where our products are at. Find out where you can buy a gram of our hash, black label, silver label. You can even pick up the white label amazingness. They probably don't have it available, but a cut above the ChemD that they have that we produce. Oh my God, gee, whoa. In fact, I think when I'm done with this, can I get there in time before it closes? I don't know if I can. I gotta go. Anyway, we're gonna have giveaways here on the JDR very soon for you. I'm very appreciative. Until we meet again, I'm your host, John Doe. See ya.
John Doe Radio.